I think now would be a great opportunity to bring on a core member of the PanQuake team. He is also the founder of Yale Privacy Lab at Yale University. So Sean O'Brien is joining us now. Sean, welcome to the stream.
Great, excited to be here. And I really would like to just talk about some of the issues that Susie just touched on. She did a great job sort of outlining what makes PanQuake different. And I think that's really what we should try to focus on, right? We all have our, of course, justifiable gripes with social media, with the big tech corporations that run our lives, right? And this is a systematic problem that we do need to get away from. But what's really cool is we have the opportunity here, right, to liberate ourselves and take some proactive control, not be so reactive. Often so at Yale Privacy Lab and then also at Digital Security Lab at ExpressVPN, we're always looking at issues with privacy. We're looking at security issues. We're looking at malware. We're talking about the polluted ecosystem of software that's out there, right? And I think a lot of folks are now very much aware of how polluted social media is, but also how controlled social media is, right? And being able to sort of take a serious control back into your life and use these amazing new features, right? The Thunderquake, the Cupquake, the Lovequake, right? Those features are not only features that are innovative, they're features which allow you as an activist, as an organizer, as a content creator, to amplify your voice, to be able to build and grow community, right? These tools are things that by design don't belong in the big tech version of social media. The freemium model is surveillance, 99% of the time, especially when we're talking about the big tech world. The team behind PanQuake is not going to ship anything that has manipulative features. There's going to be no recommendations in your feed of people you should follow, right? Your social conversation, your social stream is going to be more opt-in. You're going to have the capability to, of course, find people who are interested in the things you're interested in, but you're not going to be a rat in a maze. The manipulation that goes on, which of course fills the coffers of the Facebooks and the Twitters, I'm going to name them, of those big tech social networks, both the data coffers, right, and the actual, the financials, which are based upon that data pilfering, that kind of manipulation does not need to occur. And once you remove all that, once you step outside of the walled garden, then suddenly you can think about these new features. You can think about other ways that, people might be able to come together and have a conversation, which don't require you going through a dedicated path that can be easily studied by some data broker. So that's the first thing I really wanted to touch on. Most of the work that I do is around privacy and so on, and I was brought on to be an advisor on that aspect. And there will be a very strong dedication to privacy in this project, and that's something I'll definitely be making sure we follow forward with. But the manipulation, the social dilemma, those kinds of issues, I think, are very core to what we've seen go on in the last few years, certainly in the last year, in the last couple of weeks. It's the reason that people are jumping ship right now from WhatsApp in droves, and they're going to Signal, and some of them are going to, a lot of them are going to Telegram as well. People are hungry for new replacements for the tired old tech that's based on these data surveillance models. So PanQuake fits very well into that milieu, to use a fancy word. It fits very well into the world that we're moving into. And that's sort of a building attitude rather than just, having to feel like you're repairing all the time. is something that I think is really important about the project. Historically, right, the type of censorship, the type of manipulation that we're talking about here is as old as the written word or older, right? I always say, you know, book burning is about as old as the printing press, right? People have been burning books for as long as it's been easy for people to get their hands on the printed word. And the technology that we have here is very similar. In the late 20th century, and certainly I and others who were on the internet in that time period, there was sort of a promise of freeing information that was going on. We had a feeling that access to knowledge and collaborative, pooling of knowledge and dissemination was going to change the world. And it did. But there was a very swift reaction to that coincided with it, that was parallel to it, and which now we're really, really seeing amplified. The COVID-19 pandemic has made this easier, of course. I always say that, you know, these types of global events are opportunities for people in power who are looking for more control to get it. So the things we see with the social dilemma, the things we see with the social networks and the fervor around any alternative network that dares try to unseat, you know, the big tech ones, you know, that's something that we need to break free from. So, you know, this product is the actual fulfillment of the kinds of promises that the Facebook folks, Zuckerberg, et cetera, that Twitter's, you know, Jack Dorsey, this project can be the kind of project that actually fulfills the supposed promises that someone like Dorsey is making. Just the other day, Jack got on Twitter again and, you know, lamented about the censorship on the platform and said, you know, don't worry about it. We have a team that's on it. We're working on it, you know, as fast as we can. And that team's been working now for over a year and hasn't produced anything that's actionable or of any real merit. And we're talking about a company that, of course, is giant, has access to all kinds of infrastructure, has access to the annals of power, right? And still this thing has not materialized. So we need real grassroots solutions. We need folks who are willing to be courageous, who are able to not only implement this stuff, but to actually, you know, have that courage to push the goalpost further and then to leap over it, right? The people who are really, really looking to change the world that we're in. So we definitely need that. Utopian technology, you know, the type of technology that we're talking about here, it's been talked about before, right? Folks come along, you know, every few years, every few months even, and have projects that they say are going to change this terrible problem that we have with social media. I've been involved in the Fediverse, so-called federated social networks, for the better part of a decade now. I've implemented some of these solutions on my own and ran little social networks and so on. I can tell you that what's going on here with PanQuake is very different. And that's more about the willingness to not just reinvent the features that are in these other networks, but to try to think of ways that once you get out of that paradigm, right, you can really change the interaction that occurs online. It's going to be interesting. You know, it's a ragtag group of rebels right now, but folks who are very, very, you know, skilled at what they're doing, who have great reputations in cryptography and privacy and security and so on. And you haven't even met half the folks involved yet. The environment we're moving into, right? means that we can implement this kind of utopian technology just as easily as the dystopian technology is being implemented. So for example, when everybody was forced home, last year, and everybody had to work and stream, suddenly we're using Zoom, right? Suddenly people are on, Teams and all these other things, right? The leap was taken into technology that is not going to liberate you, into an environment that is trying to capture you in a way. That dystopian tech was suddenly easy to implement, right? People were willing to take a leap into something else. Well, if we can do that, we can take a leap into this too. And I think that's also the attitude that we know we're going to have from the audience who will be signing up for PanQuake. These technologies have been around, but we're pushing them forward. And things are going to be so much better once you start seeing the tech as it's coming through. I just want to also say there's a very ethical and strong dedication to free and open source software in the project. Already, I've seen some questions, when sort of the teaser announcement was coming through for TalkLiberation about whether the code's going to be on GitHub, whether folks are going to be able to volunteer and extend and so on and so forth. There's going to be a lot of interoperability. There's going to be a very strong community effort, and the code is going to be free and open source. So yeah, this is an incredible opportunity, and everybody should get on board. Basically, if you're in an environment like, let's say, traditional, what we now call social media, right? You're in a glorified website where you are putting up a profile, you're finding people to socialize with or add to your list of friends or followers. Potentially, you're trying to promote yourself. You may come up with, some sort of business plan around this sort of thing. Your options are limited by the type of manipulation that the founders and owners of those networks really, by the type of manipulation that they intend to do. Tools that allow you to, for example, spread, the word with activism and so on, can be very, very hard to study. And if you're interested in surveillance, right, you want specific data points. You want to be able to follow someone as they're going through a certain path. You want to be able to try to get insights into whether, okay, maybe this person would maybe in some world buy Chanel or buy, a Ford or buy, whatever the product is, a My Pillow. And when you're doing that kind of analysis on users, you have to limit the options that people have. So PanQuake basically is an opportunity to fold in some features, which, as Susie mentioned with Thunderquake, which have sort of existed before, especially in the younger days of some of these networks as an extension and so on, to revive those, polish them off, and make them a central part of the network, right? Where the owners and operators of PanQuake, because they're not surveilling people, will actively push for these kinds of features in the hopes that, the social dilemma, the corralling of users is lessened, that people's voices can really be heard, that organizers and activists can get the word out when they need to, that content creators can, monetize their content in a way that's ethical and where they can really reach people. So those kinds of features are on the table when you're not ultra spying on users. Right now, maybe in some world you could daisy chain a bunch of different solutions and, who knows what the cost would be or what the situation would be. But when you start looking at that, you have to say to yourself, why do we not have these things now? Why are these things not in our networks? In the same way, again, to bring it back to projects like the early days of Wikipedia, like the early days of Reddit with Aaron Swartz, those projects were trying to reach a goal of access to knowledge, to, having real conversations. And because of that, they were innovative in a very real way. There was a lot of information flowing through them, with very little intermediaries blocking content. Um, and a project like PanQuake is an opportunity to do that again. The transparency is huge. So, having the ability to store the information in a blockchain allows you to make sure that from the outside, first off, the network can't be destroyed, right? It means that folks can see what's actively going on in the blockchain, right? But it also allows you to, if you're going to do some kind of moderation, if you're going to decide, that some new feature you're trying to ship should be on the front end software that the user sees, it allows you to have that cake and eat it too, in a sense, where you can introduce new features without your users feeling like you're just kind of shifting the ground under their feet. These other networks make such a big deal out of, a theme changing, or, some toggle button being added to a menu and so on. And what's really going on behind the scenes is that, there's dashboards and dashboards and huge amounts of staff that are watching the users, that are surveilling the users, that are actively being paid for that service instead of working on the product, right? Instead of trying to do new cool things, instead of trying to listen to the feedback of users and meet it in any real way.